Hey guys, so as I promised, I am here to give you a life update. And I've alluded to it in the tag that Michaela and I just did, but I want to kind of go into depth about it because there's so much. And I've talked about, my mental health, and I've been open about that in several videos over the past couple of years, but I I officially got to the point with everything where I had to say enough is enough, and I had to make some really hard choices, and somehow in making those hard choices I I ended up in the most perfect possible scenario that I could end up in. So bear with me for a second. This story has a happy ending. It just takes a while to get there. For me, it's literally been 2 years. So as many of you may or may not know, about 2-ish years ago, I was promoted from a part-time bookseller at a Barnes & Noble location to the assistant store manager. That's not normal. That was a jump over several positions, over several people's heads. The whole story of how I got that job is in and of itself there was just so much that I didn't realize, having only worked there for less than 6 months, about different interpersonal politic things. I was a part-time bookseller, I didn't know them, and it was a really wild moment. And I thought when I took it that I would have the benefit of the other ASM, or assistant store manager, who was there, who would train me. But less than a month after I got promoted, she left for another opportunity, and I was not completely trained. I was passable, and I was going into a summer season, which is, not super busy for Barnes & Noble, but it is summer reading, all that kind of stuff. And I didn't know how to do my job. Not completely. And I had to learn how to do a whole bunch of things. And then that fall, I started my degree, both my master's degrees at Simmons out here in Western Mass. And so I was doing my first retail holiday Christmas season as a manager, with my first full-time dual master's degree program going on at the same time. And again, so many stories out of that I could tell you. But I came out of this feeling like it was literally trial by fire. I could do so many things that I didn't know how to do, but at the same time, my personal health, my mental health, just really started to decline as I was struggling to hold everything together, and I really didn't have time for the things that I was interested in anymore on the side. I stopped talking to most of my friends. Anyone almost that I was friends with when I was an undergraduate, I have lost by the fact that I just, they made really good efforts to keep texting me, and I fell apart basically. And again, I talked about this, and I had moments in between all of this where I thought, I'm getting better, and I've made videos about that, and I thought that was true, that I was becoming more confident in my job, that I was becoming more confident in my schoolwork and what I was doing, and that these things would mean that I was climbing up a very, very steep mountaintop. One of the first meetings that I had with my advisor at Simmons, I told her everything that I was doing, and she said, "You have to quit your job." And I just remember thinking, well, I can't quit my job because I make so much more money than I expected as a graduate, pretty much fresh out of college. I had health care, I had benefits, I was making enough money to support myself in my own apartment. And, I bought my first car. It was used. It wasn't anything spectacular. I bought it from my parents, so I paid less than I maybe would have otherwise. So, I wasn't, and I'm not by any means, flush with cash. However, I did not have to make the choice between rent or food, which is honestly my baseline as a millennial. So, and that job, I was putting away enough money to pay for my tuition. So I was not coming out in the green at all, but I wasn't always coming out in the red. And again, as a millennial, that's like the watermark right there. That's key. And as someone who struggled with money my whole life, it was just really important to me that I could afford literally to feed myself, to clothe myself, to have my apartment, to have my car, and I didn't have to worry about whether or not I'd have to give something up when rent came around. So I was very attached to that as well. And I mean, I was attached to my job. Barnes & Noble has been a part of my life since I was really young. I love books. I love the store. I, hired most of the staff that's there right now, and I just loved them, and I love the place, and I'm me, and I get really personally invested in every little thing that I do, and so I just felt personally tied to this store, which is silly because it's a corporate location and I should have done that. And then last year in February, so not this past February, but the February prior to that, Barnes & Noble laid off a lot of positions. It's not surprising to anybody. Barnes & Noble is not in the best of monetary positions themselves right now, and they laid off in our store 3 people who were very close to me, and then in the next couple of months 2 more positions were gone through attrition, which basically meant that the people left them on their own and they were not filled. And that included the other assistant store manager, the person in charge of corporate accounts, like bulk ordering, events, the social media, and some other people in a management position. And all of a sudden, I was on my own again. I had just gotten back this partner ASM, and then it was just me again. And I love a challenge. I hate being bored. I am a backseat driver all the time, so being on my own, I was like, I got this. This is fine. Everything will get done right now because I'm doing it. Ba ba da ba da. Just me and my SM. We're just gonna kill it. And then it started killing me more than it had before, and since that time, it's just been what was like this kind of a level with my mental health. All of a sudden just went and a little bit. I'm fine, obviously. I'm here. But in the fall semester, this last fall semester, I got a B plus in a pretty basic level class. Now, B pluses in graduate school are not killer. But what is killer to me is that I know that I could have done better. I had a conversation with a professor about the fact that she knew that I could have done better, and I basically just burst out into tears. And I was just like, I just don't know what I'm doing anymore. I've lost all sight of things that make me happy, things that, like, what is the point to any of this, basically, is what I had gotten down to. I didn't understand why I was putting in all this effort to wake up in the morning, to go to work, to be stressed out, to then have to come home and be stressed out because my schoolwork wasn't done. I stopped sleeping for periods of time. I think I maxed out at just under a week of just not sleeping. Because I was just like thinking about all these things that had to get done that weren't getting done, and things started slipping through my fingers, both at work and with my schoolwork. I would forget to submit things, I would forget to do things, because I was just like burning at both ends in a way that wasn't feasible, wasn't livable. I didn't want to leave my job. I cried when I gave my notice. I cried on my last day. I love my job. I loved my job. But I had gotten to the point where I had to make a choice between it and me, and I probably stayed there so much longer than I would have otherwise, because of the fact that I felt like if I left, I was giving up, first of all. And second of all, I liked making a decent amount of money that I could not replicate anywhere else. I got very lucky. I happened to be in the right place at the right time with the right resume and the right series of desperation for, you know, how I got my job the first time. And, you know, I spent about 9 months searching for jobs that would replicate that pay, and they were all like, LOL, no, you don't have the resume for this. And I had to make a decision to apply for jobs that mean that I now sometimes have to choose between this triangle of gas, rent, and food. And that is extremely stressful in its own way. Extremely stressful. And it's not great. But I'm here and I'm happier, as I'll get to in a second. And even though I'm now stressed out about money, I'll probably be okay. I'll probably have to move. I'll probably have to make some other cuts, but I'm still here. And it had gotten to the point where I was just starting to wonder if I was just going to wake up one day and just decide that it wasn't worth being here anymore. Like I said, I had been job searching pretty consistently for about 9 months. I had sent out application after application after application after application. I had gotten maybe 2 interviews out of dozens and dozens and dozens of applications that I had sent out. And I was convinced that, like, I was just trapped now in this situation where I was just spiraling fast downhill. And I was really scared that nobody wanted me and I wasn't worthwhile anywhere, and that there really was no point in continuing to try. And I happened to submit for a rarity out here where I am in Massachusetts, which is a full-time library position that didn't require me to already have my master's degree, because a master's in library science is one of the 2 degrees that I'm currently getting, the other being a master's in children's literature. And I had applied to a couple of those before, not gotten them, because again, it's very competitive. And I literally saw it the day that it was posted, and I was like, submit. And I didn't hear back. Obviously, I was one of the first people probably to send in my application, so I had to wait. And then they called me and they said, will you come in for an interview? And I think I literally said at one point, like, I don't care if this is awful, that it's horrible, that it is like 40 minutes away from my apartment. Like, they called me in for an interview, and at that point I was what I needed. I just needed somebody to say that they saw me, that they thought I was worth talking to, because I was at the end of my rope there. And the whole thing just felt like just a struggle from the start. The drive was very stressful to me. I do not like driving. I get very stressed out when I drive, because every second my brain goes, and here's another 4 ways you could die right now. I was almost late because I got lost finding the driveway and around the one-ways for the library. The parking lot was full when I got there, and I had to like struggle for a parking spot, including helping somebody back out their car, and then somebody beeped at me like I cut them off, and it was really weird and stressful. And I was late because of this whole shenanigans with being like lost in the parking lot. And so I went in and I was late, and my anxiety was like 4 times my actual size. And so when I sat down for the interview, I was not a cool customer. They asked questions and I felt like I was answering them, but I also felt like, you know, when you get really anxious and like your voice raises like 7 octaves and you're like, that was how I felt that interview went. And so I drove away, I drove to work, and I like called my boyfriend, and I was like, listen, I was given this golden opportunity and I flubbed it. And I was just like so upset with myself. And then 2 days later, they called and offered me the job. I was just so convinced that like everything that had happened the day of the interview was a sign, but they had offered me a job. And even though it was less money and it was farther away, like after 9 months, someone wanted me. And so I said that I had to think about it. I took like a whole day, and I'm calling my parents, and I'm calling my boyfriend, and I'm hanging up with my parents, and I call my boyfriend, I hang up with my boyfriend, and call my parents, and just being like, ugh. And I just decided to do it because between the fact that my schoolwork was suffering and that I was suffering, I was just like, I just had gotten to the point where something had to give. And so I said, yes, I will take this job. Please love me. And I was so nervous about it. I'd never been a librarian before. It was a whole new thing. I was no longer in charge of anything. I was the new kid on the block. And this decision has turned into the best thing that I could have done. The people that I work with now are so supportive of me and everything that I'm doing. And I get to do my homework at work if it's slow, because the homework that I am doing is making me a better librarian. And so it's relevant to work. So if it's slow, why not? I was offered to, I have to do programming at this library and to 2 programs a month. And my boss just said, do the programming that makes you happy. So now I'm teaching writing classes to middle schoolers and high schoolers. My middle school one was a success. The high schooler one, not so much. But it's a weird time to start it, and I believe. And I'm not stressed anymore because it's like the first 2 weeks I thought I must be doing something wrong because I wasn't running around screaming my head off and like wanting to cry. And actually, no, that's just how it goes. And I got bad news about my car and how much car repair my car needs the other day. And the people that I work with who had already bought the department coffee were like, we're gonna go back out, we're gonna get cupcakes. And I was just like, what? Like, I've only been here a month. What did I do to deserve you all? So, but I think probably the biggest thing to me was coming home at the end of that first week and just talking to my boyfriend, and we were just like, mucking around. I was making some jokes, and he just looks at me and he goes, there you are. There's your personality. There's the girl that I fell in love with. And he was like, don't get me wrong, like, I love you anyway that you are, but it just makes me so happy to see you happy because you haven't been happy in a really long time. So I'm a work in progress, but I'm stressed about money, and that's fine. Don't know how I'm going to pay for my last year of my master's degree, but I have to figure it out because after this year my scholarship expires, so gotta figure it out. But I'm happier all around, and I'm less stressed, and in the last month my teachers have seen such an improvement in my work, such an improvement in my engagement, and such an improvement in how I conduct myself in the classroom as well. Because, before I was like, this is the one thing that I'm good at, this is the one thing that I can control. So I was very outspoken and just very like, in class, like the really annoying person that we hate. And I didn't even care. And all of a sudden now I wish I'd done it sooner. And I know that there's no way that I can go back and tell past me that leaving behind that paycheck would be a decent thing, because I'm such a Scrooge McDuck with my money, and I'm so scared about like not being able to eat or pay my rent. So I know that even a time machine wouldn't have done it until after so many things had piled up on me. But I'm so happy that I did it, because I'm not 100% fine that 2 years of just, I don't even know, 2 years of this won't just go away. And I have to work on it, and I have to work on bringing something that makes me happy back into my life, like Michaela and I are talking about, doing this more often. So I wish I had taken care of me sooner. And I was just talking to a friend who's in the same position of worrying about leaving behind a job to, you know, jump out into the great unknown and having a lot of the same issues. She's been there a while, blah, blah, blah. And this is what I said to her. And if this is something that you need to hear, I hope that you hear it to you as well. But you are worth more. If what you are doing in any capacity hurts you, you are worth more. And I hope that she gets as lucky and that you get as lucky as I have been to find not just a safe place to land, but the best place to land, the most supportive and wonderful and fabulous place to land, because you and I are worth more. So thanks for watching, if you're still here, and you made it through this shenanigans. The rest of my content will be actual booktube content, but since I've made a habit apparently of once a year like crying into this camera, I figure just keep it.